Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Surah Al-Baqarah, Chapter 2, and we will cover verse 21, the purpose of human creation. These are the references, and all excerpts in this talk are taken from the meanings of the Quran, Volume 1. So if anyone is interested to go in further details, one can consult this volume. This is our contact. Recap verses 19 and 20. Now, this was covered in our last presentation. Continuing from the previous similitude noted in verse 17, where a man who kindled a fire when it lighted all around him, Allah took away their light. Whoever presents the guidance of the Quran, which is called Nur or light, others need to benefit from it by removing the darknesses of their life. The next metaphor is the similitude of a rain-laden cloud from the sky together with its darkness, thunder and lightning, and instead of paying attention to the physical signs of this, people just block their ears with their fingers to keep out the noise of the thunderclap and never reflect beyond the immediate effects. They need to be on the lookout for the signs in the world around them in order to find a higher purpose of life. Instead, when the higher purpose of life is presented before them, they display kufr, i.e. reject it, not realizing that the laws of Allah encompass everyone in the universe. Taking the above similitude a bit further, the Quran states that lightning all but snatches away their sight. Every time the light helps them, they walk therein, and when the darkness grows on them again, they stand still. They need to use their hearing and sight in order to reflect on these signs of Allah. These physical signs and the resulting reaction of man to these are all part of the scales defined by Allah in the functioning of the world and the universe. And the last point is, there is nothing in the outer world or the human world which does not have precise scales and laws established by Allah. The Quran helps us to discover the functioning of these scales and laws in order to help establish the system of Deen. An overview of today's presentation. The verse 21, being analyzed, covers a number of important aspects related to the creation of man, that is Adam, on the planet Earth. The verse starts by addressing the whole of mankind of all times, i.e. past, present, and future. Mankind is invited to ponder on the choice of obeying the laws covered under Rabubiyat so that the purpose of human creation can be met under the divine attribute of Rabb. And we know that this attribute deals with the development of all things in the universe towards that aim which has been fixed for them by Allah Himself. So this is part of the creation. So when it is related to mankind, it means that aim for which man has been created, and that is the topic of today's presentation. Merely living life at an animalistic level will meet the needs of the physical body, but the requirements for human self-development will not be fulfilled. Human beings are created for a higher purpose, which means to rise above the animalistic level by following the guidance of the Quran. The Quran provides guidance for those among you who choose to follow the path defined by it in order to become Muttaqeen. Because Quran's addressee is man himself. So over here, when Allah says you, it means everyone among mankind. Without becoming Muttaqeen, you will not be able to accomplish the purpose of your creation and will live earthly life at an animalistic level. Hence, all those latent potentials which are kept within you in order to create a new life within you will remain unused. And this is a great loss towards which the Quran repeatedly draws our attention. This failure on your part will deprive you of the benefits associated with a developed self. Without this self, the system of Deen based on Rabubiyat cannot be established. Now we go to the verse 21, the purpose of human creation. Ya ayyuhan nasu abudu rabbakumul ladzi khalaqakum wallazina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun. Hence, O members of humanity, you should not be deceived by the glittering, eye-deceiving, self-created system of these nations. You should bring yourselves under the laws of your Rabb, that Rabb who created you and your forefathers, and who, despite so many destructive forces of the universe, brought the human race to this stage by causing it to pass through various phases. This is the only technique due to which you will remain protected from the dangers of the path of life. And while going through this verse, we should keep it in mind, the world of 2024 and all the problems we are facing in this world, and how the Quran is asking us to create a different world than the man-made world. The explanation of Abudu, which has appeared in this verse, see details under verse 1:5 Iyaka Nabudu. We have already gone through the details of Abudu. The purpose of human creation, some phrases. What I've done over here is that just carried out a quick search on Google and came up with some phrases which I thought of interest and I'm sharing over here. You cannot have a creation without a creator, and that is a very obvious statement, but it does not go beyond identifying a creator. Every act of creation is first an act of destruction. This is something interesting. Our life is our own creation, and that is interesting because if it is created, that is, our life is created, under relative values, it will be different from the one we create under the permanent values. The beauty of creation gives us reasons to sing God's praise, and this is part of the way religious people look at it. And we have gone through this aspect under Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, under Surah Al-Fatiha. Every part of creation sings His glory. Similar phrase, we can exist here just as a piece of creation or as the source of creation. This is the choice we need to exercise. So that is that we are a creator ourselves, and some of this aspect will be covered in today's presentation. The whole of creation with all of its laws is a revelation of God. And finally, the purpose of human life is to serve and to show compassion and the will to help others. Setting the scene for further elaboration of today's presentation. The creation of the visible universe and the earth being part of it is being al-Haq, as noted in verse 45:22. We have gone through this verse previously as well, so I haven't put down its English translation. وَخَلَقَ اللَّهُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ بِالْحَقِّ وَلِتُجْزَى كُلُّ نَفْسٍ بِمَا كَسَبَتْ وَهُمْ لَا يُظْلَمُونَ. That Allah has created heavens and the earth bil haq, that is for positive outcomes as truth. وَلِتُجْزَى كُلُّ نَفْسٍ بِمَا كَسَبَتْ, so that every nafs, that is every human self, finds the recompense of what it does, kasabat, that whatever deeds they do, they should find the results of that. وَهُمْ لَا يُظْلَمُونَ, the system is so comprehensive with its scales and laws that nobody can be treated unjustly. And if it is to be applied to the system of deen, then it is Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen, which will ensure that the deeds of everyone are recompensed in that system. Then the Quran declared in verse 64:2, "Huwallazi khalaqakum faminkum kafirun wa minkum mu'minun wallahu bima ta'maluna basir." Human beings are created, that is, you are created to see that who would like to be a kafir and who would like to make a choice to become a mu'min, and Allah sees all the deeds of everyone. So wallahu bima ta'maluna basir, that Allah is aware of what you are doing. So which means under the system of deen, we have to keep this as a value, and people and the system will be organized in a way so that people's deeds can be observed and they can act as judge on themselves as well as on each other. Man is to face physical death after arriving in this world, and the purpose is Allazi khalaqal mauta wal hayata liyabluwakum ayyukum ahsanu amala wa huwal azizul ghafur. That Allah has created death and life so that we can go through different events of life, different struggles of life, and to find out asanu amala, that who is the best in doing his deeds. And we should ensure that our deeds are most balanced. And over here, two attributes of Allah have appeared. Aziz means that he is very powerful, and Al-Ghafur is that if people follow and do these asan amala, then they will have protection as well. And Al-Ghafur is part of being Muttaqeen. Endowed this creation called Adam with all the latent potentials which can change the face of the earth if employed as per the guidance of Wahi. And Quran says, "Laqad khalaqna al-insana fi ahsani taqweem," that man has all the latent potentials which can be brought out under the guidance of the Quran. And as a result of that, those bringing out that best of man, he can create a beautiful world. Created man possessing choice and intent, and then provided external guidance as the Wahi of Allah to practice his choice, either to follow his own unbridled desires or to follow the guidance of the Quran. And Quran says, "Laqad anzalna alaykum kitaban fihi zikrukum afala taqilun," that this book has definitely been sent unto you, in which it is about your own eminence. And if you use your intellect and reasoning, you will figure it out. So essentially, without the Quran, man lives on this planet Earth without the other choice. The only choice he has is to end his life with death. And the next one is then made clear to man that this book of Allah is Ya Yuhannasu qad ja'atkum mau'izatum min rabbikum wa shifa'un lima fis sudur wa hudan wa rahmatul lil mu'minin. We have covered this verse under Surah Yunus, and again it starts by addressing mankind that this guidance has come to you min rabbikum, so that you can get the best out of your life under Rabubiyat and make an effort to accomplish those aims and purposes for which you have been sent to this world. وَشِفَاءٌ لِمَا فِي الصُّدُورِ, and there is treatment, there is a prescription, there is a formula to deal with all your psychological issues and needs. And if you follow this path, then it becomes a guidance for mu'mineen, who in fact become mu'mineen by following the Quran, by accepting its guidance. Why should we know the purpose of our creation? Knowing what the purpose in life is, we stay motivated and direct our efforts towards achieving that aim. When one aim in life is achieved, we seek another one. Without Quranic guidance, our aims are always based on this assumption, whether it is conscious or subconscious, that the life ends with physical death. And we can find it out that the way we have lived our life up to this point, we definitely had some kind of an aim. And primarily that aim is to succeed materially in the world. The Quran draws our attention to the presence of our trait of choice and intent, and to our nafs, which has the potential to create new life. And new life over here means is that there is a life we live without the guidance of the Quran. And then the transformation takes place when we acquire Iman and start doing Amal Saleh and come together and work for the system of Deen. That outlook, that new outlook which we acquire within the guidance of the Quran under its permanent values and by displaying divine attributes, that is new life according to the Quran. And that new life, we know about it once we have acquired it, that it is quite different from our previous life when we lived a life without guidance of the Quran. We are asked to reflect on the creation of the universe around us, and then to come to this conclusion that Rabbana ma khalaqta hadha batila subhanaka faqina azaban nar. And that conclusion is that our Rabb, you have not created all this as batil. Batil means for destructive purposes. If we look at the world of 2024, where a lot of destruction is going on around us, we may come to this conclusion without the guidance of the Quran that there is no purpose to this life. Human beings are just meant to create chaos and conflict and wars and murder each other, hurt each other. But Quran says that is not correct. The purpose is al-haq. Not understanding its purpose will lead to the creation of hell in the human world. Because if we do not understand Rabbana ma khalaqta hadha batila, then we will remain confused And it is important that we come to terms with the creation of Allah and find out ourselves that it is Al-Haq. And that is the efforts we are making on this platform. We need to take our creation as human beings seriously. وَمَا هَذِهِ الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا إِلَّا لَهْوٌ وَلَعِبٌ وَإِنَّ الدَّارَ الْآخِرَةَ لَهِيَ الْحَيَوَانُ لَوْ كَانُوا يَعْلَمُونَ. I thought to share this verse, and there is another verse in Surah Anfal I quoted over here, verse 24. It's worth going through that as well, with a view to, because there is Al-Hayawanu has appeared over here, that is, this is the life. What is the life of this world but amusement and play? But verily the abode of the hereafter is the life indeed, if they but knew. Law kanu ya'lamun, so we have to acquire knowledge about it. And that is an important aspect. And hopefully today's presentation deals with some aspects of human creation. The Quran's address is mankind. In the next verse of Surah Al-Baqarah, the Quran states, and I have quoted here the translation, O mankind, follow your Rabb who created you and those who came before you, that you may have the chance to become righteous, that is, to become Muttaqeen. Previously, three categories of mankind appeared before us: Muttaqeen, Kuffar, and Munafiqeen. As has already been noted, the basic address of the Quran is to mankind. That is, when it addresses mankind, it means it addresses their intellectual and reasoning potentials. The Quran mentions different groups and categories of men in accordance with the differentiation in their character and behavior, actions and deeds, and qualities and traits. Otherwise, its message is very much for universal mankind. Its Allah is the Rabb of mankind. The proclamation of his messenger is, say, O mankind, I am sent unto you as the messenger of Allah, and a giver of glad tidings and a warner to mankind. All messengers served as warners as well as giving glad tidings to people that if you follow the path of the wahi of Allah, then you will become successful. His book is an evidence and perspicuous light for humanity, and a healing for the psychological ailments of the whole of mankind, which includes admonition, guidance, and rahmat, on the bestowing of which they should celebrate. And this life is not meant to be miserable, full of grief and fear and huzn. The Quran says that if you follow the guidance of the Quran, you will be totally free of every kind of psychological issues, because you will understand the higher purpose of your life. And since you'll be working for that, so that change which takes place within you, which gives you new life, will become an evidence in itself. For example, the Quran says, "Lejunzira man kana hayya," that this is a warning, guidance for those who wish to remain alive, who want to create a new life within them. Remember, durability and sustainability are only for that deed which is beneficial for the whole of mankind. These are those deeds which are termed as being righteous deeds, that is, amale saleh, which bring out our best, and virtues. It is as a consequence of these that authority and government is achieved in this world, and the springs of paradise in the life of the hereafter. Some of these aspects we have already covered in our previous presentations. Next slide is, man should choose to obey the laws of Allah. The aim and objective of the Quran is to connect the whole of mankind into the relationship of universal brotherhood. It states that at the beginning of their communal life, men lived in the form of one ummah. But after that, they created mutual differences and became divided into different tribes, clans, parties, and nations. In order to remove these differences and divisions, the process of heavenly guidance and direction was commenced. The messengers were sent as givers of glad tidings and as warners. They were bestowed with codes of values and laws so that through these they could cause these divided human beings to become one ummah again. And of course, the important point over here is that if people wish to remove their differences, if people do not wish to remove their differences, then no one can remove their differences, because they have to make a choice that I'm not happy with the psyche I have to remove those differences in order to establish the system of deen, so that all our grief, fear could be removed. and we live as one brotherhood in the world with no chaos and conflict. This is the reason given for the lengthy process of divine guidance and blessing. It is on this very basis that in the verse being discussed, An-Nas is addressed, that is, mankind is addressed. And they are told the same thing which was being repeatedly stated through various Anbiya, i.e., abandon the laws and regulations created by men, which by dividing you into factions have turned you into enemies of each other, and follow only the divine laws. And it is our choice that which path we wish to follow in life. Even if everyone is following the wrong path, still individually, once we start doing it, then we become eligible for the help of Allah. And then gradually people make a Jamaat, come together, strengthen their unity, remove their differences, and keep moving forward. The purpose of human creation can only be fulfilled if man adopts obedience and compliance to the divine laws. And Quran says, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. Jinns, that is nomads, and men are created so that they may serve me through laws. So Quran over here has addressed mankind with two groups, those who live in the rural areas as nomads and those who live under urban dwellings. Men, whether they are living a communal life in towns or the dispersed life of desert tribes like nomads, can only achieve the purpose of their creation when they adopt the rule of Allah alone, because it is to their own advantage. Next slide is the attribute of Rabubiyat of Allah. As has been noted already, the personal name of God in the Quran is Allah, and the remainder are all his attributes, which are called Al-Asma'ul Husna, that is, best balanced attributes of Allah. These attributes of Allah have been presented with great frequency and reiteration in the verses of the Quran. Whatever attribute of Allah has been referred to at any place, it fits exactly and explains the meaning of that verse in a very appealing style. In the verse under view, it is stated, O mankind, follow your Rabb, i.e., here the attribute of Rabubiyat of Allah has been portrayed in a prominent way. This is because the subject of the verses under view is itself the universal Rabubiyat of Allah. The meaning of the term Rabb has been explained in the first verse under Surah Al-Fatiha. This can be noted there. Its meanings are the one who, while providing nourishment to something, takes it stage by stage from its starting point to its destination of completion, i.e., the provider of the means of nourishment to everything as per its needs. And this is important. I've highlighted this aspect because we have to concentrate on it, because it applies to us as well. That if we want to acquire new life, we have to move forward stage by stage. Creation and its sustenance. In this verse, after the attribute of Rabubiyat, by stating Khalaqakum, Allah's attribute of Khalqiyat has also been noted, which means the creation part of it. And by stating He created you and all those people who have gone before you, it has encompassed the whole of mankind from beginning to end. This means that whatever is about to be said is not confined to the people of any particular era. It will apply from the beginning of mankind to the final generations of humanity. In other words, Allah has created them all. He who is responsible for providing the means of sustenance to them regarding the process of creation, Quran says, follow His laws who created you and the generations before you. And together with creation, He has stated about Razakiyat, and Razakiyat over means all those aspects which come under the means of sustenance and all those resources which are available in the earth. It is Allah who has created you. Further, He has also provided for you sustenance. So Quran presents a very comprehensive view of man's creation and all its needs, not only in this life, but also projects it in the life of the hereafter. And the only thing which is required by us is that we should pay attention to it, think into it, reflect profoundly into it, discuss it, and then keep moving forward as one united Jamaat. At many other places, it has also been clarified that other than Him, there is no creator or sustainer. In Surah Fatir, it is stated, O mankind, call to mind the grace of Allah unto you. Is there a creator other than Allah to give you sustenance from heaven or earth? There is no God but He. How then are you deluded away from the truth? And this is evidence-based fact. Because if we look around in the world and pay attention, then we will come to this conclusion that there is a creator and there is someone who knows how to create and how to maintain that creation of his. And the Quran explains it in detail. At another place, this reality and proclamation are repeated, and it is stated, say, bring forth your argument if you are telling the truth. The next slide is continuing on creation and sustenance. This mutual connection of creation and razakiyat is very profound and merits great attention. It is obvious that human beings or some other creation did not request Allah that He should create them in the world. And a very important sentence over here, that we were not asked to come to this life, but since we have come over here, now we have been provided guidance to figure out that what should be our choices and what will be the consequences of those choices on our physical self as well as our own self, that is our own psyche. He has produced creation according to some comprehensive and all-embracing program of His. And all this is given in the Quran, explained in detail if we make an effort to figure it out. Just consider, would it not have been injustice and wrong that a creation was produced, but the resources and means on which their life and nourishment was dependent was not created? Allah did not do this. He first of all created these means of sustenance and nourishment, and then following this, that creation for whom this wherewithal was required. Experts on earth and life sciences inform us that air, water, light, heat, and the potential to grow in the earth came into existence first, and living creation came into being afterwards. This is the fundamental link between creation and razakiyat. Furthermore, when we see in the world that a vast proportion of creation remains deprived of the means of sustenance, this is a consequence of the non-divine distribution of sustenance, which men have held back in their own hands. Otherwise, Allah had created these resources and means for the Rabubiyat of the whole of mankind on an equitable basis. And this distribution, bringing it under the system of deen, under the domain of the permanent values, is the purpose of providing guidance to man. And that is how Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen come together and create new life within them individually and then collectively, and then proceed on this path of deen called Sirat-e-Mustaqeen. Details of these matters have been covered under verse 3 of Surah Al-Baqarah. Further elaboration of these will also appear in the verses being discussed, and even following this, wherever there is a discussion about the economic system. This was, however, just an additional point. The real subject here is takhliq, that is creation. We will discuss various aspects of Rabubiyat as we proceed through the Quran. We have already become familiar with many aspects of Rabubiyat. Expanding the term khalq, that is creation. The root of khalqun is this one. The fundamental meaning of this is to measure with a view to making something or cutting it, to estimate it, to assess its proportion and balance, to make one thing from another thing. Hence, khalqun will mean to estimate something, to trim and refine its outline, and then to make it with style and form so that its proportion and balance remains absolutely precise. In other words, by giving ever new combinations to different elements to keep creating new things from them, an explanation of this point will appear later. Allah has called Himself Ahsanul Khaliqeen, the best of all those who create. This means the Quran also acknowledges man as possessing abilities to create from the things already created in world. The world of 2024 is created by man under relative values, not under the permanent values of the Quran. Further reflections on the domain of Amr. In Surah Al-Araf, it is stated, is it not that Khalq and Amr belong to Him? Be aware that Khalq and Amr are both for Allah. No other is a partner with him in these. These are what are commonly called the domain of Amr and the domain of Khalq. The mutual connection between Amr and Qadr was explained in our previous presentation. We have gone through some of these aspects of Amr in our previous presentations as well. The word Al-Amratu was used for the path in a desert that was flagged by placing small stones. From this respect, its basic meanings are sign, marker, or direction. This word is also used for numerous other meanings, but here we will confine ourselves to only these meanings because the subject under our consideration is related to these. It is clear that when some manufacturer forms the intention to make something, then first of all, a concept or idea about it emerges in his mind. Then he thinks and reflects about its different aspects. He envisages the possibility of its creation and constitution. And when he has ascertained all these matters theoretically, then he takes a step to make this thing in a tangible form. In the creative program of Allah, this first stage is called the domain of Amr. So human beings also conceive plans. They have an idea, they have a thought, they have a desire, they have an aim, and then they start working on that. In this, all matters related to the thing which is going to become created are decided conceptually. You can call this the planning stage. But in the creative program, this stage is so important and intrinsic that without it, nothing can be brought into existence. And if this stage is established with certainty, then it is as if that thing has come into existence. For the expression of this fact, these kinds of verses appear in the Quran in various places. For example, when he makes a decision about an Amr, then he says to this Amr, be, and then it becomes. 3 stages leading to creation. We can know nothing about what this Amr of Allah is and how it is carried out. Our knowledge is restricted to the domain of Khalq and cannot advance beyond this. Of course, after seeing the word of Khalq in which we are born and live our life and then die, from there we can get some clues towards the domain of Amr. Because under Khalq we come across various scales and values. And we find that all these are very precise and all these lead to certain outcomes. The renowned philosopher Pringle Patterson states that it is a limitation of the English language that there is only one word creation in it for takhliq, even though it was necessary that there should have been separate words for these 2 stages of takhliq, that is invisible and tangible. In the Arabic language, these separate words, that is Amr and Khalq, exist. And the Quran has used these for this very purpose. The Quran has used not just 2 separate words for these stages, it has used 3 words. And the 3 stages in the creative program to which these words point are very important and fundamental. And we'll come to those 3 stages next. When the stage of Amr becomes decided, then after that the stage of Khalq appears in front. This is that stage where that thing adopts a tangible form. The meaning of takhliq is the creation of a new thing by mixing different elements together in precise proportions. For a human manufacturer or artisan, this stage is very easy. When he decides on the plan for something in his mind, those elements by combining which he has to make that thing are already present in front of him. For example, in the case of construction, we have bricks, steel, cement, sand, and all these things are made available. Then we start constructing it according to a plan. But when Allah began his creative program, this was not the situation. He prepared a blueprint of the creation of the universe in the domain of Amr. At that time, there was nothing in existence like this from which the creation of the universe could take place according to this program. First of all, it was necessary to bring those elements themselves into existence from whose new combinations different things of the universe become created. This is the 3rd stage, or we could say the middle stage in the creative program of Allah. Because if there was nothing and Allah has made a plan, then he has to create all those things which are required to turn his Amr into Khalq. Next slide is Allah creates from nothing. The Quran has used the words bada and fatara for this, i.e., bringing something into existence for the first time. In Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah has described Himself as to Him is due the primal origin of the heavens and the earth. And this is interesting that how Quran solves all these issues by telling us that whole of this universe has come into existence from nothing. And when it is stated that because all the scientists who are not guided by the Quran and they are not even seeking guidance from the Quran are still spending a lot of time in trying to figure out what was there before the Big Bang. And over here, Quran has put it right in front of us that all this has been created from nothing. And if we accept, we understand the concept of Allah given in the Quran, then all subsequent phases of development of the self make it clear to us that what is the higher purpose of life for us as human beings. In Surah Yusuf, it is stated, creator of the heavens and the earth. In Surah Al-An'am, this word has appeared as an active participle where it is stated, we created the elements of the heavens and the earth from nothing. We wish to confine ourselves to the basic points of this program. Following analysis of various things in the universe, Western scientists reached this conclusion that by delving further and further into the constitution of these things, we reach such a point where certain things appear before us that are not compounds of different constituents but are in fact unique. These unique things are called elements. Up until recently, these were numbered as being 92. Now a few more have also been added. In fact, these are now over 100. It was easy to determine about compound things as to how these came into existence. However, human knowledge has not been able to determine anything about how these elements came into existence. For example, when they analyzed a drop of water, they reached this conclusion that it is a compound made up of 2 parts of hydrogen and 1 part of oxygen. This is why water is called H2O. But hydrogen and oxygen are both individual elements. No one can tell how these came into existence. Next slide is man struggled to find answers to these questions. The Greek philosopher Democritus is considered to be the founding father of this analytical research into matter. His research was that matter is a compound of such tiny particles which cannot be divided further. These indivisible particles are called atoms. This doctrine continued until this era of ours when scientists made this further discovery that every atom of matter is in reality a carrier of positive and negative charge. And when they progressed further, they stated that these electrical waves are nothing more than merely pure energy. If some atom of matter is split, then from this such colossal energy is obtained from which this massive planet Earth can be blown up. That which is so well known today as atomic energy or nuclear energy is this same energy. It should be made clear that the Quran is neither a book of science, nor at the present time is the scientific explanation of matter or topic. All we need to say is whether elements are in a tangible form or in the form of energy. The real question is, how did these come into existence? The Quran has termed these as bada and fatara, i.e., it has stated that Allah has brought these into existence from nothing. Beyond this, it is out with the grasp of our intellect. Our mind simply cannot comprehend how something can come into existence from nothing. These things are present and no one can deny their existence. But no one can tell how these came into existence. Even a great scientist like Einstein could only say this much. Physical science has now turned all things into movement. The universe, which appears to us to be a collection of things, is not a solid entity which is situated in space. This is not a thing at all. Instead, it is an action or a structure of events. Next slide is man needs the Quranic guidance. And that is a fact. And that is where we should concentrate as students of the Quran. Have you observed how the direction of scientific research is turning from the domain of khalq to the domain of amr? This fact that how did the beginning of this universe of matter take place remains a conundrum. This is that point where Addington is standing perplexed, looking towards the heavens, just like the farmer who plows his fields. That is, the scientist and an ordinary farmer who doesn't have any scientific background, both are standing at the same place, same status, same with the same understanding about the universe. Ernest Haeckel has written a very interesting book which is titled Riddle of the Universe, in which he writes, we should acknowledge that we are just as ignorant today about the truth and reality of nature as we were 2,400 years earlier in the time of the Greek thinkers, or 200 years previously in the time of Newton and Spinoza, or 100 years previously in the time of Kant and Goethe were ignorant. We should, in fact, also accept that the deeper we attempt to delve into the depths of this atom from which this universe is formed, and of which matter and energy are properties, the more mystifying it becomes. We can obtain knowledge about its physical forms and their evolutionary stages, but what the actual reality is behind these forms, we can know nothing about that. And all this pursuit of finding something about the physical universe, the human self, still remains undeveloped because it is still following the relative values. Dr. James Arnold Crowther, professor of physics, University of Reading, states that the system of nature in its profound fundamental simplicity is so spectacular that in the word of science, the last word on any subject will have to be left to the last man. Increase in creation. As we have said above, the Quran is not a book of science, but along with this, it is also a fact that despite it not being a book of scientific knowledge, wherever and whenever it does point to some fact, then scientific discoveries support it. Regarding the initial elements of the material universe, it has only stated that Allah brought these into existence from nothing. But after this, it has informed us how, following this initial stage, the creative program of Allah gives a final form to different things after passing them through various evolutionary stages. It is He who begins the process of creation of anything and then takes it forward by progressing it through stages. The aim from going through these steps is so that precise balance and proportion becomes created in it by trimming its rough edges. Who has created and further given order and proportion. He creates a thing and then gradually keeps creating balance in it. It is on this basis that Allah has called Himself the initiator of creation, the evolver, the bestower of forms or colors. In other words, the one who initiates creation, then after that passing that thing through different steps, trimming its imperfections, and in this way giving it a final form. By calling Allah as Al-Musawwir, the Quran has made this reality clear. How by passing different things of the universe through creative stages, He brings these into a specific form. Next slide is Ahsanul Khaliqeen, that is the best of creators. This trimming and refining by Allah of the things of the universe is the most exquisite manifestation of beautiful proportion and balance. He has stated, He who has made everything which He has created into a balanced form. Allah is He who has conferred the most balanced and proportionate, that is the pristine form to everything. And it is from this respect that He has declared Himself the best of creators, i.e. the best creator among creators. And in fact, the word of 2024 is which man has created, man has yet to bring out his best, because this is a word man has created without the guidance of the Quran. Other than the beauty of creation, there is another great point implicit in this. The fact that Allah has called Himself the best of creators means that He accepts the existence of other creators too, although the difference between them and Allah as creators will be that Allah is Ahsanul Khaliqeen, that He creates in the best mold, in the most beautiful way He creates by taking into account every aspect of His creation, while the other creators of a lower status. And if we take man as a creator, because Allah has included man among those who create, that means the best out of man will only come out when he will follow the guidance of the Quran. It is obvious that in our known universe, only man can be a creator, i.e., making ever new things from different material resources. Takhleeq and Tawleed, that is creation and procreation. So we will look at the difference between the two. It is obvious that there is a fundamental difference between creation and procreation. Man and animals are all of them included in the process of reproduction, i.e., procreation, which is the consequence of sexual mating. If man also remains confined to reproduction alone, then he does not progress beyond the animalistic level. And this is the state of the man in our today's world. Never mind how much development has taken place technologically. As a human being, man is still struggling with his own self. The potential for the ability to create is what distinguishes him from the animalistic level. In other words, the action of animals is reproduction, not creation. Man has control over both procreation and creation, and the act of Allah is not reproduction, it is only creation. This is why at many places he has refuted the false belief of Christianity that the messenger Isa was the son of Allah. Among some of the very comprehensive attributes of Allah counted in Surah Al-Ikhlas in the Quran, one among these is also this: He begets not, nor is he begotten. And this is based on evidence. Neither he himself is the outcome of the act of reproduction of someone, nor does reproduction take place through him. So much so that he himself is also not a creation. The other is the creator. And even more than that, he is Fatir, he who creates from nothing. Man can be a creator, but cannot be a Fatir. We cannot create from nothing. And even in the case of creating new life within us, we have a self. We change that self into a new life, into a new look, into a new being. At the level of the human self, man cannot create his own self. And this point has been discussed previously as well, that at a self level, whatever we become, for example, whatever education we acquire, we cannot pass it on to our children through biological process, through their birth or procreation. At this point, we should keep in mind that the integrity and unity of self is absolute. A self cannot be subdivided. Increase in creation. This belief about Allah is also false, that once he had created the universe, he sat back doing nothing. He has said that his creative action is continuing unabated. He adds to creation as per his will. And it is extremely satisfying and a source of contentment for mu'mineen, that Allah is always there. That is why Quran says, Huwa ma'akum aina ma kuntum, that he is with you wherever you are. He keeps on creating ever new additions. The renowned thinker Ernest Cassier writes in his book, An Essay on Man, in connection with the process of evolution, this fact is now emerging that evolution does not mean that original creation is now not occurring. Emergent evolution is, in fact, original creation or new creation. This discovery has resulted in an important change in Darwin's theory of evolution. And George Gaylord Simpson, an expert on the science of evolution of our time, writes, there appears to be this trend that in the process of evolution, in all possible aspects of life, ever new additions are taking place. Additions and then further increase in these additions. And in the evolution of human self, once mankind comes to live life within the permanent values, we will see amazing results, and we will be exposed to so many surprises, pleasant surprises, that how much balance will come to the human world. Allah is fully aware of all of his creation. In this belief was contradicted, according to which it was thought that the universe is a clock which Allah wound up once and it is now busily functioning automatically under its own energy, and having fulfilled this duty, Allah has gone to sleep contentedly. And that is the way human beings under the man-made system function. They assume that, okay, there is a creator and here is the world. Now it is at our disposal. We can live the way we like within the laws created by us. And That is how we see the word of 22-24, where there are conflicts and bloodshed everywhere. And the Quran says, not at all. Allah keeps making ever new additions to creation and is also fully aware of their every state and condition. In order to traverse through evolutionary stages, the things of the universe are in a new state at every moment. They are in need of the means of sustenance according to that stage which Allah continuously provides to them. In Surah Al-Rahman, it is stated, of Him seeks its needs every creature in the heavens and on earth. Every day in new splendor does He shine. And the aspects of Rabubiyat, once these are manifested after the establishing of the system of Deen, the new splendor of this shine of His will come before us, will appear before us. That is why Quran says, Ashraqatil ardu binuri rabbiha, earth will shine with the light of Allah's Rabubiyat. The condition of different things in the highs and lows of the universe is such that at every moment they are in a different state, and in every state of theirs dependent on Allah for the means of sustenance. And since Allah is not ignorant of His creation, hence He keeps meeting every need of theirs in a balanced way. And the point over here I will add is that once we acquire a new self, a new life within us, we come to grips with this splendor of His shine, that is of Allah, this new change, this new transformation into ourself has taken place because of the guidance of the Quran, and we have become a different human being. Emergence of life, the next slide. As far as the beginning of life is concerned, scientific research is also baffled in this regard, the same way that it is astounded and perplexed about the beginning of the universe. Though after the initiation of life, the conclusion to which they have reached about living things is the product of the doctrine of evolution. Although this doctrine originated via the renowned scientist Darwin, after him so many other such changes have taken place in it that you could say that the name of Darwin can only be taken as a mark of respect. After studying the pages of the manuscript of nature and from the perusal of buried treasures of ruins and archaeological signs, the conclusion to which the human mind has arrived at about the emergence of life and the creation of man is noted below in brief words. The beginning of life on the face of the earth occurred from water. By the coming together of water and clay, the first life cell came into existence. These cells of life, after dividing into different species like the branches of a tree, began growing, developing, and spreading in different directions. After phases consisting of thousands of years, different kinds of transformations kept occurring in the forms of these life cells. After passing through these phases, consisting of very long durations, the process of creation reached the destination which is called Tawleed, i.e., creation through reproduction. This can be taken to mean animal life. And animalistic life, after passing through similar further very long durations, stage by stage, revealed itself in the human form, and in this way the life of Homo sapiens began. Human creation. Since understanding this issue of how life came into existence was beyond the human intellect, this is why the Quran has moved on after only touching upon it to this extent. We made from water every living thing. Will they not then have Iman? In other words, life is dependent on water for its emergence. It emerged from water itself, and even now, where there is no water, the emergence of life is not possible there. And that is why scientists are looking for signs of water on other planets. After this, the Quran has stated that the central control of this original source of life belongs to Allah Himself. In Surah Hud, it is stated, Allah's control is established over the fountainhead of life. And on this same basis, He has stated in various places, the law of life and death is in the control of Allah. After this, the question which arises is, how did man come into existence? A detailed discussion on this topic will be carried out at that place where the story of Adam comes before us. Here it is sufficient to say that this concept which prevails among us, that Allah first of all made a figure out of clay, and by breathing ruh into it gave it a human form, and then by splitting open his rib cage brought out his consort from this, and in this way from this very first couple of a man and a woman, that is Adam and Eve, the process of multiplication of the human race commenced. This concept is not Quranic. It has been borrowed from Judaism. Some reflections on the stages of creation. The signs which are available about human creation from the Quran also turn the direction of our thinking towards the doctrine of evolution itself. The Quran has informed us that He began the creation of man with clay, that is, inorganic matter. When this inorganic matter became mixed with water, then this was the next link in this process of evolution. So it is proclaimed, we have created them, that is human beings, out of a sticky clay. Scientific research tells us that this sticky clay is the same as that which is visible at the bottom of lakes and on the banks of ponds. The very first cell of life came into existence through the amalgamation of water and clay. This cell contains within it all the greatest lofty potentials of life. Just as a tiny seed containing a mighty tree within itself is desperate to display its blossom and beauty. And this is a beautiful sentence put down over here by Allama Parvez, that we all have these latent potentials which can be brought out through the Quranic guidance. And if we can keep them suppressed over there, whereas these are desperately waiting for our action, for change in our outlook. The moment we start to seek guidance from the Quran, these latent potentials will manifest themselves and will bring a lot of pleasant surprises in our life. This is that very first cell of life which the Quran has termed as nafs-e-wahida, that is single nafs. For example, it is stated, it is He who has produced you from a single nafs. Here is a place of sojourn and a place of departure. We detail our signs for people who reflect. And I have highlighted it because Quran demands our intellect to use its extremities. That is, it should reflect on it profoundly and continuously through our life in this world. Allah is He who has advanced you from a single nafs. Then different stages were established for you, so that you remain at one stage for a defined period of time, and then that stage will hand you over to the next stage. Undoubtedly, we have explained our laws of life clearly and explicitly for those who reflect and have vision. This transferring, i.e., the time taken to reach from one stage to another stage, lasted thousands upon thousands of years. Next slide is man needs to focus on his choice and intent. Referring to these progressive stages, it is stated in another verse, He has created you by putting you through diverse stages. And at another place, you shall surely travel from one stage to another stage. And this also means that if we are following Sirat-e-Mustaqim, we should be able to find out our stage at every point in time in the light of the Quran, because there are clear signs posted and explained in the Quran that once you are progressing on this path, how will yourself develop and how the system of deen will emerge at some point in the future. While transforming from one state to another state, you will of a surety keep progressing forward on the highway of life and will also keep rising higher. After passing through these early stages, that destination arrived from which the process of reproduction advanced through sexual mating. And this is the biological side of human creation. The Quran has stated and made his progeny from a quintessence of the nature of a fluid insignificant. And in this way, verily we created man from a drop of mingled sperm to pass through various stages. After this, we gave him gifts of hearing and sight. We showed him the path, whether he be grateful or ungrateful. That is, the choice rests on his will. Surely, we created man from sperm in which different latent potentials exist mixed together. And human creation in itself is the biological creation of man in itself is amazing. It's a miracle in itself that in those tiny cells, how many potentials are hidden, including the latent potentials, which can only be brought out under the guidance of the Quran. Then we kept turning him through various states until he was made into a hearing, seeing being, possessing intent and freedom to choose. After this, we showed him the correct path of life and left it to his choice whether he wished to adopt it or reject it. In this way, a man possessing choice and intent came into existence. We go to next slide, a carefully planned creation by Allah. The Quran has summed up this long and vast account in a few lines in Surah Al-Sajdah when it states, He rules all affairs from the heavens to the earth. In the end will all affairs go up to him on a day, the space whereof will be as 1,000 years of your reckoning. The condition of the schemes of Allah is such that they are in a latent form in the heights of Allah's knowledge. When it is intended to bring one of these schemes into action, then it is initiated from the lows of the earth. From here, that scheme, traversing its evolutionary stages, keeps rising towards its stage of completion. These stages are traversed in very long durations of time in which each interval, according to your calculation, consists of thousands of years. For example, Quran says, He began the creation of man with clay and made his progeny from a quintessence of the nature of an insignificant fluid. Then passing through these various stages, it ended up at that destination where its process of reproduction was declared to be via sperm. But He fashioned him in due proportion. Continuing on human creation. By trimming and adjusting his imperfections, he was corrected in every manner, and due proportion and balance was created in his limbs and parts. The Quran states, and breathed into him something of his energy, that is ruh. And this is the crux of everything about human creation, about which scientists are struggling to figure out the source of this choice and intent. And they cannot find out the source of our consciousness unless they come to the Quran. Because from all this discussion, all this information which we have shared today, one thing is absolutely clear, that human creation is for a precise purpose and is carefully planned and is being monitored by Allah Himself, by His presence everywhere. His laws and scales are there to help us. And it should be very reassuring for those who are making an attempt or on the Surat Muttaqeen as Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen. And He gave you the faculties of hearing and sight and feeling and understanding. Very few among you utilize these abilities for the correct purpose. Because if we utilize these, then we will become guided and we will progress towards the system of Deen in this life. And of course, all our efforts will acquire far higher rewards in the life of the hereafter. Because these are all built within the development of the self. In this way, mankind, not any particular individual of humanity, came into existence through the evolutionary process. This is that mankind which has been told that, O mankind, follow the laws of that Allah who has created you and is also responsible for your nourishment. Obey His and only His laws so that you remain protected from the lethal dangers of life. Protection from dangers. And that is why the issue of becoming Muttaqeen comes into play. And that is why Quran at the beginning said that this is a book, Hudan lil Muttaqeen, provides guidance to Muttaqeen who wish to become Muttaqeen. And a glimpse of Muttaqeen can be found in verse 177, on which we have gone through many times before. These dangers which destroy life are of two types. Firstly, physical incidents in the universe, and those are earthly and heavenly. That is, includes the natural disasters which man has to face on the planet Earth. As far as these events are concerned, just bring this scene to mind that when human consciousness opened its eyes, what kind of world did it find itself in? Above his head, a great blazing sphere continuously spewing fire, that is sun. Gigantic, intimidating mountains, boundless oceans near and far, their destructive, stormy waves, here and there tumultuous rivers with indeterminate banks, terrifying jungles extending as far as the eyes could see, and very dangerous beasts and reptiles within them. Sometimes the terrifying thunderclap of clouds, sometimes the petrifying flash of lightning, sometimes killer storms and tornadoes, somewhere the deadly lava of volcanic mountains, at other places the destruction of earthquakes all together. This kind of onslaught of deadly perils all around and surrounded amid these the progeny of Adam, without a helper and devoid of means and resources. He began his life from this environment. But note the miracle of so that you become righteous, that is, you become Muttaqeen, that despite all these hazards, the caravan of mankind kept on progressing forward unabated. And of course, above all these environments which man faced at that time on his initial arrival, and now any man coming to today's world is faced with chaos, conflicts, and wars created by man himself. Mankind is evolving forward. At this juncture, a great reality disclosing verse of Surah Al-Araf spontaneously comes before us. That verse which has been twisted into something else through its customary prevalent meaning. In the idol worshipping of khanqahs, that is the boards of Sufis and even monasteries, you may have specifically heard meaningless words such as Yawme alast, Maste alast, or Kalu Bala, etc. And then those myths based on these foundations, which in the words of Iqbal have been carved out by non-Arab thinking to adorn these fictional tales. The traditional translation of that verse is this: when your Rabb drew forth from the children of Adam from their loins their descendants and made them testify concerning themselves, saying, Am I not your Rabb who cherishes and sustains you? They said, Yes, we do testify. This, lest you should say on the day of judgment, of this we were never mindful. The entire meaning of this verse will be explained at its own place. Here it will suffice to say that the Quran has stated to Bani Adam, that is the progeny of Adam, that is whole of mankind, that you tell us that despite all these destructive elements which have been noted above, and other than these external hazards, despite even the destructions caused through human hands themselves, is this moving forward of the human race with continuity, living evidence of the Rabubiyat of Allah or not? And we can see that when one force transgresses to its limits, another force stands up against it and fights back. And human beings have tremendous spirit, that love of life within them, that desire to counter evil under the law of requital is within us, within human beings, and they stand up against injustices and tyranny. The existence of the human race is a talking picture and glaring evidence of divine Rabubiyat. Inquire about this from a scientist. He will tell you what a great reality the Quran has described in this one verse. To conclude this verse, that is 221, as far as earthly and heavenly incidents are concerned, dealing with them was still easier because the creator of the universe had informed man that, and he has subjected to you as from him all that is in the heavens and on earth. Behold, in that are signs indeed for those who reflect. These were those malaika, that is forces of nature, which bowed before Adam. Therefore, there was no danger from them to the children of Adam. The danger was from that Iblis, which resorted to rebellion and transgression against him. And that is man's own unbridled desires, emotions, passions. This is Iblis, those emotions of man which go outside of the bounds of Wahi. The consequence of these very emotions is those batil, communal and social systems of man in which the view expressed in, for example, word 236 comes before us, i.e. in which man himself becomes the victim of mankind, and the most destructive batil system in these is the one which is related to economics. i.e., is connected with the distribution and utilization of the means of sustenance. And it is towards this very issue that the Quran has drawn our attention in the next verse. So we will be dealing with some aspects of Rabubiyat in our next verse. Who has made the earth your couch and the heavens your canopy, and sent down rain from the heavens, and brought forth therewith fruits for your sustenance. Then set not up rivals unto Allah when you know the truth. From today's presentation, we can come to this conclusion that human creation is for a higher purpose. And if human beings seek the guidance of the Quran, then they do not have to live through all these conflicts, wars, which are more associated with human emotions and unbridled desires, which create problems in the world. So this is something which Jamaat-e-Mu'mineen should keep in mind and never give up and stick together and hold on to the rope of Allah, which is the Quran. Thanks for your time and for sharing this today. Please feel free to share it with your contacts. You may like to subscribe for future talks related to the Quranic system of Deen.